I want you to think back to a moment where you felt, for lack of a better word, slow. Maybe it was a math test in high school where the numbers just wouldn't click. Or maybe it was a social gathering where everyone else seemed to have the script and you were just reading the subtitles. We've all had that sinking feeling in the pit of our stomach that says, I'm just not as smart as they are. We carry that label around like a heavy backpack for the rest of our lives. We look at an IQ score or a GPA and we let it define the boundaries of what we can achieve. But what if I told you that the room you're standing in is much bigger than you thought? What if the ceiling you've been hitting isn't actually there at all? Most of us are judging our entire cognitive worth based on a single narrow window. It's like judging the quality of a whole house by looking through the keyhole of the front door. Today, we're going to unlock that door and look at the 9 different ways your brain actually processes the world. Because the truth is, you aren't low on intelligence. You might just be looking for it in the wrong category. In 1983, a psychologist named Howard Gardner dropped a bombshell on the world of education. He argued that our traditional view of intelligence was far too narrow. Before this, we mostly measured something called the G factor, or general intelligence. This is that single score you get on an IQ test that supposedly predicts your entire life. But Gardner proposed the theory of multiple intelligences. He suggested that the human brain isn't just one single computer processor. Instead, it's more like a Swiss Army knife with different tools for different jobs. Each of these tools represents a distinct way that we process information. Some people have a high-functioning blade, while others excel with the scissors. The problem is that our modern society, especially the school system, only rewards 2. If you aren't a master of words or a wizard with numbers, the system tells you you're broken. But psychology shows us that these are just 2 modules in a much larger machine. When we talk about intelligence, we're actually talking about specialized neural networks. These networks allow us to solve problems or create products that are valued in a culture. So, if you've ever felt dumb because you couldn't solve a quadratic equation, you might just be ignoring a massive surplus of intelligence in a different sector. I want you to picture the golden student from your high school, the one who always had their hand up before the teacher even finished the sentence. They could memorize 100 lines of poetry and solve a calculus proof by lunch. In the classroom, they were treated like royalty, the undisputed kings of intelligence. But then graduation happened, and the real world didn't have a syllabus. I remember a friend like this. He was a human calculator with a perfect SAT score, but when it came to reading a room or navigating a difficult conversation, he was lost. He could explain the physics of a car engine, but couldn't figure out why his partner was upset. It was a jarring realization for both of us. The map isn't the territory. School taught us that being smart meant being good at logical, mathematical, and linguistic tasks. We were led to believe that if you could master these 2, you had mastered life. But outside those 4 walls, the golden student started to struggle. He had the academic hardware, but he was missing the other 7 tools in the kit. It's a story that plays out in offices and homes every single day. People who are brilliant on paper, but can't seem to navigate the complexities of existence. This brings us to the physical intelligences that often get dismissed as talents rather than brains. First, we have visual spatial intelligence. This isn't just about drawing. It's about how your brain maps 3D objects in your mind's eye. Architects and pilots don't just see, they calculate distances and rotations subconsciously. Then there's bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Think of a surgeon or an elite athlete. Their thinking is happening in their muscle fibers. The brain is processing thousands of micro-adjustments in real time to achieve a physical goal. Psychology calls this proprioception and motor planning. It's a high-level cognitive load. Finally, there's musical intelligence. This is more than just liking a catchy tune. It's about structural pattern recognition. The brain is decoding rhythm, timbre, and pitch, languages that exist without words. When you see a drummer playing a complex polyrhythm, that isn't just rhythm. That is a specialized neural network performing high-speed data processing. If we only value the math brain, we ignore the genius of the body brain. These are not just hobbies, they are sophisticated ways of solving problems. Think about the last time you were in a room with a natural leader, someone who could walk into a tense meeting and within 5 minutes have everyone laughing. They didn't use a spreadsheet or logical proof to change the energy. They used a different kind of data, the invisible signals we send with our eyes and our tone. I once worked for a manager who was, by all academic standards, a genius. He had PhDs and patents, but he was socially blind. He would give a brilliant presentation while the entire team was clearly disengaged or frustrated. He couldn't read the room, and because of that, his brilliance was trapped inside his own head. Then there's the opposite, the person who understands themselves so deeply they never panic. They're steady and certain. They know exactly why they're angry, exactly what they need, and how to self-regulate. Most of us spend our lives reacting to our emotions like they're the weather. But these people, the ones with high internal intelligence, they own the thermostat. They aren't just nice or calm. They are processing human data at a high level. It's the difference between seeing a storm and understanding the atmospheric pressure that caused it. The final two pieces of Gardner's puzzle are often overlooked in modern life. First, we have naturalist intelligence. In our evolutionary past, this was the difference between life and death. It's the ability to identify patterns in nature, distinguishing a poisonous berry from a safe one. Today, we see this in botanists, chefs, or even people who are incredibly handy with materials. It is a specialized sensitivity to the organic world and its complex systems. Then we have the ninth intelligence, existential intelligence. This is the capacity to tackle deep questions about human existence. Why do we live? Why do we die? What is the point of all this? Philosophers and theorists operate in this space using abstract reasoning to navigate the unknowable. It requires a high level of metacognition, which is essentially thinking about thinking. While an IQ test might ask you to rotate a shape, existential intelligence asks you why the shape matters. Both are vital for a functioning society, but only one is traditionally graded. When you combine all 9, you realize that intelligence isn't a single tower. It's a massive, sprawling city with different districts, all working together. I want you to imagine you're trying to run a high-end video game on an old, dusty laptop. The fan is spinning like a jet engine, the screen is freezing, and everything feels sluggish. That's what it feels like when your fluid intelligence starts to hit its natural limit. I remember a specific night during a high-pressure project where I just stopped. I was staring at a problem I had solved a dozen times before, but my brain was full. I couldn't hold the new variables in my head long enough to make a connection. It's a terrifying feeling, like the RAM in your biological computer is maxed out. We often associate this quickness, this ability to process new data on the fly, with youth. And in a way, the biology backs that up. Our raw processing speed peaks in our early 20s. But as I sat there that night, frustrated and feeling diminished, I realized something. While I couldn't process the data as fast as the 22-year-old intern next to me, I could see the pattern of the error much faster than he could. I was losing my speed, but I was gaining a different kind of horsepower. In psychology, we distinguish between these two using the Cattell-Horn-Carroll model. Fluid intelligence, GF, is your ability to solve novel problems without prior knowledge. It's your raw reasoning, your working memory, and your mental bandwidth. But crystallized intelligence, GC, is the library of everything you've ever learned. It is the accumulated knowledge, vocabulary, and expertise you've built over decades. Think of fluid intelligence as the speed of your processor. Think of crystallized intelligence as the size and quality of your hard drive. As we age, our processor naturally slows down. It's a biological reality of the prefrontal cortex. However, our hard drive continues to expand, often well into our 60s and 70s. This is why wisdom is a real psychological construct, not just a poetic idea. You might not be able to learn a new language as fast as a toddler can, but you can understand the nuances of a complex political or social situation much better. The hardware might get older, but the software is constantly getting an upgrade. I remember sitting in a pottery class a few years ago, surrounded by people half my age. I was struggling. My hands wouldn't move the way the instructors did. The clay kept collapsing into a gray, muddy puddle on the wheel. Every instinct in my brain was screaming, "You're too old for this. Your brain is fixed." We've been told for decades that after 25, the wet cement of the mind sets into concrete. But as I sat there, covered in slip and feeling foolish, I started to notice something. On the fourth week, my fingers moved without me telling them to. The map of the clay was suddenly living in my nervous system. I wasn't just learning a hobby, I was physically remodeling my own hardware. It was a small, messy reminder that the ceiling we talk about is often just a curtain. We think we're stuck with the brain we were born with, but that's a biological lie. The bridge between who you are and who you want to be is built with repetition. Even when it feels like you're failing, your neurons are actually firing and wiring. So, the billion-dollar question: can you actually increase your intelligence? The answer is a nuanced yes, but it depends on which intelligence you're targeting. To boost fluid intelligence, you have to increase your working memory. Studies on NBAC training suggest you can stretch your mental RAM by taxing it. Think of it like high-intensity interval training, but for your prefrontal cortex. To expand your 9 intelligences, you have to engage in cross-training. If you're a math person, pick up a guitar. If you're a musical person, try coding. This forces your brain to create white matter tracks between different specialized regions. This is called cognitive flexibility, and it's the secret to general brilliance. You can also leverage dual NBAC exercises and mindfulness to reduce attentional blink. This allows you to process more information per second without getting overwhelmed. And for crystallized intelligence, the protocol is simpler. Interleaved practice. Don't just study one thing for hours, jump between 3 different subjects. This forces the brain to reload information, which cements it into your long-term storage. You aren't just filling a bucket, you're building a more efficient pump. So, where does that leave you? Think back to that feeling of being slow or not enough that we started with. I hope you can see now that the yardstick we were using was broken. Your intelligence isn't a single number etched into a stone tablet. It's a living, breathing architecture, a unique skyline of 9 different towers. Maybe your math tower is short, but your interpersonal tower is a skyscraper. Maybe your fluid processing is slowing down, but your crystallized library is world-class. We spend so much time trying to fix our weak intelligences that we forget to inhabit our strong ones. Don't let a standardized test tell you how much space you're allowed to take up. The 9 intelligences aren't just a theory, they are a permission slip. They give you the right to be brilliant in a way the world hasn't recognized yet. So, the next time you feel like you've hit a ceiling, just remember, you aren't stuck. You're just standing in the wrong room. Walk through the door. the rest of your mind is waiting for you.